now. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Graham Parham. I'm with Highlands Residential Mortgage. Today, we are talking with a real estate professional. Joining me today is my production partner, Aaron Stelly. And our special guest today is Phil Alexander. And I've known Phil for several years now. We've done business quite a bit. He's a great guy. I love working with him. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about Phil, and then we're going to kind of get right into it. So Phil started off real estate industry 20 years ago, initially focused on land development down in Central America, where he oversaw some sales and marketing for a large scale resort development, believe it or not. He subsequently joined a real estate advisory overseeing sales and marketing, and he became a licensed real estate agent in Nevada. We'll have to talk about that here in a minute. Phil's been exposed to about 16 different markets around the country. He's currently the CEO and Director of Client Successes for Portfolio Properties USA. Remember that one, Portfolio Properties USA. He plays a vital role in the marketing and developing of real estate investors. He's currently focusing on 3 different markets right now: Baltimore, Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh. Phil's got a great inventory that we're going to talk about here in just a minute. But we're also going to talk about what customers, how they engage with you, because I know that you have a really in-depth way of presenting properties, making the investor feel comfortable, especially the newbies, like providing them with renovation examples, photos before and after, inspections, rent rolls, all that we're going to get into in a moment. But he does a great job at that, and his management companies that represent these markets are outstanding. So with further ado, Phil, let's just talk about, you got into this business and we're down in Central America. Tell me how Phil became Phil. Okay.
Well, thanks, Graham. I'm really thrilled to be here, Aaron, with you as well. I actually took a very odd path to get into the real estate business. I started, my degrees are in hospital administration, actually. And that led, because I decided I didn't want to be in a house full of sick people for the rest of my life. I got into the wine business. I know it's an odd sort of turn and twist. Did that for 13, 14 years. And it led to first a step in travel publishing, where I oversaw international advertising for a luxury magazine group focused on real estate and helping other companies and developments and resorts make a ton of money, until I woke up one day and I said, it's time for me to make some of that money for myself. So I jumped into the real estate development business. I worked in land development in actually the southeastern United States for a short while, and then worked with companies in both Caribbean and Central America, finally landing in Central America, overseeing sales and marketing for a couple of very large-scale resort development projects. After a good run, decided it was time to come back home, and I did so, worked as overseeing portfolio strategy and sales and marketing for an advisory group. And in my career, I've counseled and mentored and coached, if you will, over 5,000 real estate investors.
Wow.
During that time.
That's impressive.
I have, as you said there, Graham, worked in 16 or maybe even 17 now markets around the country, but it wasn't just simply like some people tick off boxes, like I've gone to so many states of the 50 United States, and they're trying to get all 50. No, it's a reality, and I think we all, as in being involved in this business, understand that reality. Is that not every market is on the same cycle. And, a market that's hot today and investor advantaged, great for all of us to be working with, is not necessarily going to be that great market tomorrow. And so, over the past, 15 plus years of that kind of thing, gone from market, you've got to be nimble. You've got to be able to refocus your efforts and advise your clients properly as to where to best put their investment dollars. So that's what led to the 16 or 17 different markets. Today, I'm sorry, were you about to say something, Graham?
No, I was just wondering, in those other exposed markets, obviously you're now focusing on these three.
Yep.
Some of the other markets that may have taken that cycle, as you just mentioned, what markets are those? Just your own opinion.
Sure. Well, I mean, probably 14 years ago or so, Phoenix was like super hot, white hot,
True.
but there's a seesaw relationship that goes on, between home prices and returns. When the home prices are low down here, the returns are high, and vice versa. And so we were doing great business in Phoenix, and then all of a sudden prices went up, cap rates went down. So what do? If you're invested in that market, you're laughing all the way to the bank, because when rents, when prices go up, rents tend to follow. When rents go up, your cash flow increases. When cash flow increases, your profitability increases, and you laugh all the way to the bank. However, it would have been irresponsible of us, seeing this change and flip in the market, to continue advising people to invest in that market. So we turned focus. I think it was Dallas, and then Houston, Atlanta, and Memphis. I've had long runs in Kansas City and St. Louis and Indianapolis. The Ohio markets are very strong now. Everything, and they've got a lot of them. I mean, Dayton and Cincinnati and Columbus and Cleveland. We have, though, managed to uncover a couple of very cool things about the Mid-Atlantic and East Coast. One of my absolute favorite markets right now is Baltimore. And the reason for that, even though I don't know if you all have seen the streaming series, The Wire, I watched it with passion and interest. And even because I've worked in Baltimore for a number of years, I sought out some of those neighborhoods, and they actually did exist, or maybe even they do exist to a certain extent. But here's the cool thing. There is no market in this country, no urban market at least, that doesn't have kind of a dark underbelly, if you will. We're not in the hood. We're, focused on really good parts of the city. But the interesting thing about a city like Baltimore is that it's kind of a feeder market and a bedroom community for Washington, D.C. You've got all those mid-level bureaucrats working for the government that can't afford those $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 a month rents in DC. So what do? If they're smart, they hop on the train, maybe even in the club car, and drive and go 40 minutes north to Baltimore. And they go into their $1,200 a month little townhouse, and they're happy as could be. But the thing is, Baltimore has been one of those rare cities with, somewhat depressed home prices, but very healthy rents and thereby returns, averaging 9% cap rates, pretty much across the board.
Is the metro going all the way up to Baltimore?
Well, it's not the metro, but it's the regional train there. But it's a 40-minute run right into Baltimore.
Yeah,
downtown.
the metro works. I know that. I used to live up there. I lived on the Virginia side. But Baltimore is a very, very cool city. I will say that.
Love Baltimore.
Oh, it's great. It really is. And I've looked at some of those houses, and I guess we're going to have to call them row houses. Is that what the
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Row houses are pretty much it in Baltimore, also Philadelphia, which is another interesting market, because I've worked many, many years in Philadelphia, longer than even in Baltimore. Hot as all get out, 10 plus years ago. Then it cooled off a bit, and now it's back with a vengeance. You have a more mature market in Philadelphia, but it's still a great market to invest in. It's just not as immediately dynamic as Baltimore is.
Right.
I think if you're looking for you've got to be willing to go into a property that's ripe for, economic, gain on an investment basis. These are not necessarily the prettiest of houses, but guess what? Unless you're planning on living there, what difference does it make as long as they're well renovated, sound, good tenants? And that's exactly what we've got. But we kind of, played around with our process to
Do
better.
you feel like some people try, as an investor, you got to take the emotions out, okay?
Absolutely.
And if you look at a house and go, would I live there? Well, then you shouldn't be an investor to begin with, okay?
Correct.
Most of the ones that are providing the high profitabilities are in the B and C neighborhoods and maybe some occasional Ds. But the C neighborhoods are always the strongest when it comes to profitability. Is that pretty much where that you focus?
Totally. I mean, I don't know about you, but I generally lock the car doors when I'm driving through the Ds. But look, the ABCD neighborhoods thing was borrowed from commercial real estate, where each designation has a very clear definition. Okay. And so it's a little arbitrary in this residential investment world. But basically, A's and B's. A's are where all of us might choose to live if we had the choice. B's are predominantly owner occupied, but healthy number of tenants. Still decent curb appeal, not as high prices, higher returns as a result. C's are absolutely, in my opinion, the best investor sweet spot in almost any market.
Sure.
C plus. You don't want to be in the hood, but you want to be on the front edge of a market or of a neighborhood, because in time, what's going to happen? It's absolutely going to further gentrify. Values are going to raise up, rents are going to rise, and you're getting in on the early side, but not in a dangerous or risky way.
Now, Pittsburgh, tell me a little bit about that, because I've visited there. We've done multiple loans up there, seen appraisals come by. How do you do the difference between, say, a Pittsburgh and a Baltimore?
Okay, less urban in the areas in Pittsburgh that we're investing in, more of the sort of single family detached properties. I love the people in Pittsburgh, Graham. They're hardworking, honest Americans, and they're just rock of the earth, if you will. And the returns, by and large, are not quite as dynamic as in Baltimore. More like some of the more mature areas of Philadelphia. But again, it's this difference in structure that kind of sets a little bit of a different tone for Pittsburgh from the other two markets.
Good. So I always said that if I die, I want to come back as Phil Alexander. He leads a life that I think is pretty interesting. Can I share your travels or no?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Well, just tell us about your life. But Phil,
Okay.
you spent half the time in the States and the other time.
Yeah, well, okay. We can thank the pandemic for very little, but in my case, I thank it for, I live in the UK. Half to 2/3 of my life. I am blessed that my partner is formerly with British Airways, now retired thanks to the pandemic. But because she was with them for so many years, you get as many years as she was with it for travel benefits going forward. So we have another, she retired 2 years ago, I think, 2.5 years ago. We've got another 23 years of travel benefits. I come back and forth, on British Airways to the States, like most people might contemplate taking a shuttle from Boston to New York. I'm a Boston boy, born and bred. I've got 3 kids that I know of and have paid for. My son delivered my very first grandchild, my granddaughter, end of January. I was very excited about that. And I've got 2 daughters, one on each coast, one here in San Diego where I happen to be, at the moment, and one that lives in a beautiful place overlooking the Hudson River and the Statue of Liberty in Jersey City, and works at JP Morgan in Manhattan. I'm truly blessed.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So Phil, I'm a newbie. I heard that real estate is really the place to go because I'm not doing much with my 401k. It's now 101k. So I'm going to come to Phil and say, Phil, tell me about real estate. What should I know? I'm just trying to show our audience from soup to nuts how you handle newbies, investors,
Okay.
show them the properties, inspections, everything that I just talked about.
Sure. Well, first of all, about my company, because it is related to that question, Graham, I've been in the business long enough that I can speak with clarity on the perspective of what was and what is. It used to be that you'd go to a seller if you were a new investor and you'd say, okay, what do you got? And he'd show you maybe a couple of addresses and you'd say, well, I guess that one looks okay. And then it would be 2+ months while it's being renovated. Then you'd have it inspected. Now, inspection reports are always a 4-letter word. And that 4-letter word is ugly. If it's not, in fact, your inspector hasn't done their job, but the seller is expecting it. And you should too, if you're a new investor, because, a lot of sales, if they haven't been properly inoculated, die right at that point because they're just scared. They're nervous. But there is no bad inspection report that can't be corrected. So then you'd go through that. And then, Graham Parham and his team come in and do a lender's appraisal. Okay. And that's another possible point of contention, because if it doesn't appraise, what do? There is a prescribed, process or formula you can go through. But once that's done, let's say the property appraises, yay, we're getting in close to a close. But then you've got to have a qualified tenant put in. You don't really know much about the tenant. How can you? It's a brand new tenant. But hopefully at the end of that, what is often 4-month process, you're able to close on your property.
No. All right. So I come to you 4 months ago and we went through the exercise.
If you came to me excuse me for interrupting, Graham, but if you came to me 4 months ago and you were a brand new investor, you'd have been able to buy at least 3, maybe even 4 properties because I would have hooked them up with you guys. See, here's the thing that we do to shorten that window. Okay. My partners and I sat down actually a few years ago and we said, what is wrong with this picture? Where do we lose people? What is wrong? What are the pain points? What can we improve? And what we did was created a process which is much more transparent, that does a great deal of the initial due diligence that an investor is going to do. Because every single property, we don't make a property available to an investor unless it's already been renovated with a qualified tenant in place. We go through at our expense and having a third-party inspection of the property done. We do our own correction against that, but we know that the buyer is going to do the same. That's okay. And we also do at least a desktop appraisal, which, as we all know, can't be used for lending purposes, but it does support at least the value of our properties that we put out to offer.
Let me kind of explain what you just talked about to our audience, because the inspections and appraisals, a lot of people get confused. Okay. And it's great that you do your own inspection up front to know what's underneath what's underneath the hood. Okay. And so you do your inspections, you do a desktop appraisal, which is great because you got to sell the thing and you got to make sure that the comps are going to be there. That's a good thing. And then of course we come in with our appraisal. So a lot of times I've seen this over the years, I've been doing this for 25. And sometimes those newbies, when they look at the inspection, as you say, it's a 4-letter word. But if you get to the point where you're seasoned investors, sometimes those inspections, some of those things really don't matter. Okay, so this wall's got a scratch on it. Well, that can be fixed. Okay, if the window's cracks, well, that can be fixed. I mean, people get way too involved on these inspections, more so than they should, and that's up to you to talk them off the ledge, saying this is not that important, or we're going to fix it. That's great. And typically when we see that, then what I like about you, Phil, is if the appraiser, gives you a call, says, hey, I'm going to come out and look at the property. A lot of times you can show them all the data that you surfaced, the inspections, all this other stuff. Yeah,
Absolutely.
it makes it easier on the appraiser. And I don't think we've missed many appraisals over the years, Phil, that I know of.
No, I don't think so either, Graham. And I think the important issue here is, and you touched on this in your kind introduction, is that we compile with we have a pretty extensive active inventory. I mean, right today we have well over 110 properties in Baltimore alone that are renovated, tenanted, and available for sale. We have over 35, maybe 40 properties in Philadelphia, and we're in a resupply because we just sold through just about everything we had in Pittsburgh. But that will be accomplished shortly. But what we do is, the process with a new investor, if they come to us, Graham, we like to talk to them, find out what their goal is, understand what their economic situation is, how big is their war chest, which is the amount of liquid capital ready to deploy when they're ready to pull the trigger. We don't twist arms, we don't jam square pegs in round holes. There's always going to be a good fit for every investor. And then, we find out, what is your ultimate long-term goal? What's the end game here, and try to express in thousands of dollars of passive income per month where you want to end up. And a lot of people, it might be 3,000 a month, it might be 5,000, 10,000, even 20,000, but usually it's tied to an event. I want my spouse to be able to give up the 9-to-5 job, or I want to give up the 9-to-5, or I want to buy that weekend place on the shore that I've been thinking about, whatever the case may be. And the last thing we ask is, what time frame are you giving yourself to accomplish this? Is it 5 years, 10 years? And there's a formula. If you're looking at markets like growth markets that we're in, your average price of a property is going to be generally 100 to 120,000, which is incredible to people in California or New York or Boston, but that's reality. And that's going to, after all direct expenses, even your mortgage payment, that is going to spit off, just roughly speaking, $250 to $400 net positive cash flow every month. Okay. So you take the amount of money that your end game says, thousands of dollars, divided by that figure, whatever you want to use, 250, 300, 400, whatever. And that's going to tell you how many houses you have to buy. And then if you want to do it over 10 years, you just divide it by 10. And a lot of people can't conceive of buying like 20 houses, but over 10 years, that's 2 inexpensive houses a year. It's really not that remarkable.
That's exactly what I did. I said, okay, what is my end game? Okay. What kind of cash flow do I want to have? Okay. I initially said, okay, let's have 35 properties on my belt. And then I said, well, is that really going to keep my wife in shoes? Let's take that up to 50. Okay. So that's my end game right now. But the great thing that I love about being a real estate investor is that I just got through with my accountant. We finished up our taxes. And he goes, Graham, do you see this line right here? Do you see that line? How much money you made last year in real estate? And I went, that's what it's all about right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I have some colleagues that I was just with over the weekend. And they talk about, a path that a lot of investors are interested in taking. And that is, a lot of investors just don't have a big war chest, if you will.
Right.
So what a lot of people are doing is they're looking not at passive income, they're looking at active income, and they're wholesaling, which you don't really need a lot of capital necessarily to jump in. It is nice to have guidance from somebody who knows how to do it, but wholesaling. And then some people, when they start to build up a little bit of capital, will turn to flipping, but that's also active money. You're not building wealth. What is turnkey rentals? Turnkey rentals equals passive income and your future. That's your retirement. That's that line item that your CPA points out to you and so shows you how much money you made last year on real estate and presumably will continue making. and that's what it's all about. What we believe in doing is, aside from all this, the inspection reports to make sure the property's in good condition, the desktop appraisal to support the asking price, or not the sales price, and the value. If we have a client who has a property in escrow with us, in other words, an earnest money deposit with the title company and under contract, we will even give them access to the owner's portal at the property management company, where they can go in and see the background of their prospective future tenant and look at the tenant ledger to make sure and feel comfortable that that person is actually a solid citizen and paying their rent on time. And you know what? God forbid, but if there's anything that doesn't work for that client, well, we've got probably another 100 properties or so that we can shift their focus to, so it all works.
Your price points are really, really good. For anybody that wants to start off in real estate, they say, well, let's just go buy a $50,000 property. Well, your $50,000 property is going to bring you a $50,000 tenant. Is that something you really want to deal with? That's the D neighborhoods we were talking about earlier. Exactly. But that 120 or that 125 to 150, that's been a sweet spot for many, many years. It's easy to get into from a down payment perspective. Even with the rates being a little bit higher, you're still kicking off cash flow. I mean, it's a win-win in those price points. I've invested in, my very first one was $29,000, and the tenant walked out on me the next day, and I had it empty for 5 months, and I finally sold it. I made a profit. But I got into it, and I tell people all the time, all it takes is once. Dip your toe in the water once, go through it once, and you'll come back to me or Phil or whoever, say, well, that wasn't so bad. Let's do another one. And it happened to me. That $29,000 that I spent on that year, after I closed, I said, that was pretty easy. End up buying 8 the rest of the year. Of course, my wife told me, okay, time to put the brakes on. So I slipped number 9 in there and never told her about it until about a couple of years later, which I really regret doing, but here's nor there. I mean, people can invest by themselves, even though they're married. If they don't, if the wife doesn't want to participate, you can do it on your own. You're not tied to a husband and wife or a community state, if you will, that you have to participate.
Well, Graham, I mean, you're a lender, okay? And the bottom line here is, lenders, I love this reference, but lenders will share with you, I think it's what the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac rules, you can have in your own name up to 10 conventional mortgages. And they're often referred to as golden tickets. I love that reference. But if you're married, you can have 10 in theory. Your spouse can have 10. And trust me, I'll help you out if you get to that 20 number and you want to move on. I've got strategies to address that, but you got to start with one.
Right. And that's the exact advice that I give all my clients. Like during the interviewing process, are you married? Do you have a business partner? So forth and so on. And then you finally get to the point where you say, okay, here's your end game. My end game is I want to have as many as you have, Graham, say 40 or whatever the case may be. Well, okay, great. But you got to use up your golden tickets properly, which means that, yes, let the husband do the first 10, or let the husband do the first 5 and the wife does the next 5, so forth and so on. And then you get up to the 20. And trust me, guys, there is life after Fannie Mae, as Phil has referenced. So that is the strategy. Okay. And it's a good strategy. So
we like to I love working with new investors, and as I said, I've mentored and coached over 5,000 investors in my career. What's really exciting and rewarding for somebody in my shoes is to be able to work with Graham Parham and his incredible team. And secondly, and that is important, by the way, before I continue with what I was about to say, I want to say one thing that I really, really love, and this also comes from feedback that my clients give me who've had the joy and pleasure of working with you and your team, Graham. Your companies and your communication and how you do it with borrowers at every stage and step of the process is remarkable. Remarkable. It is truly something that, especially for new investors, so important. And they really feel they have a strong understanding of the process and confidence in you as a result. So I think that's, and I'm so thrilled to be able to share that with people and send my clients when they're looking for a good, because it's important. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but it is so important when you're buying residential investment property to work with an investment savvy lender. Because, unlike the big boys who all they do is they look at your debt, your income, and your debt to income ratio, and that's it. And they think when you're buying an investment property, oh boy, you're just adding more debt to the picture, and that's a negative. And we all know that every single investment property that's cash flowing at close is helping your financial picture. And
that's an excellent point, Phil, because people come to me all the time. Well, how many can I afford? And like you mentioned earlier, I can sell you like 5 right now. And then they come to me, can I buy 5? Well, I don't know. Are they all tenanted and occupied? Yes. Well, then the answer is yes. If I can afford, if you can afford to buy 1, then you can afford to do 10. Because as you say, you got your payment on the debt service, you got your rents coming in that's offsetting the debt service, and then there's a cash flow. And we give 75% of the gross rent back to credit on the application. So it's almost like your DTI is going down instead of going up.
Exactly.
So that's a good thing.
No, it's really very, very special. And I just get such a charge every time I can help a new investor close on a property, because one thing we know from many, many years of experience in this business, investors don't come to us to buy one property.
No.
They're coming to buy and build a portfolio, and that's what it's all about.
Well, let's share some of your properties with the audience. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
There you go.
All right, Phil, I'm gonna come over and start off with this one here. I'm gonna let you kind of take it from there and talk about this particular property on Curly.
Sure. Well, a lot of times we're investing in terms of the properties that we acquire and promote in zip codes. This 21213 in Baltimore is super. We've done, I think, hundreds of properties probably in this zip code alone. It is a 160 purchase price. When we say the closing costs are estimated at 5,600, it's kind of a simple, like 3% formula, give or take, of the purchase price. But one thing you want to look at, you see that this has a 7.86 annual return, which is a little low for a lot of the properties we promote in Baltimore. But it's a super solid house, fully renovated, really nice renovation. It's a 3-bed, 1-bath property, but an older structure. You can see it was built in 1927, and that's very typical for a lot of row houses in Baltimore. This one happens to have a rent of $1,400, qualified tenant in place. And then what we do to determine that return is we deduct the direct expenses. The property management, the taxes, insurance. Seems silly to put the rental license inspection and city fee, but we do anyway, because total transparency, and you end up with a little over $1,000 in net operating income on an annual basis. 12.5, divide that by your purchase price, and boom, you get your 7.86% return. Super solid property. This is going to be a good cash flower for a lot of years.
Let's go to the next one here.
And Pennington, this is another solid zip code, 21226, and this property a couple of years older than the 3313 Lindale, but this is also rather typical. Look at the square footage. It's a little over 1,000 square feet, not a big property, excuse me. But again, we're in a good place as far as purchase price, as far as rental amount, the expenses, tax especially, and the insurance really low on this, and it yields a 9.06 return. But that's not atypical really for the market. Again, remember what I was saying before, the property prices are still on the low side, but the rents are very solid, and overall it yields a strong return.
What would you say your vacancy rate is in Baltimore? Just out of curiosity.
Oh, you mean overall the market?
Yeah, as far as your management is concerned.
I mean, as far as our properties,
Yeah,
zero.
perfect.
Zero. No, we don't, Graham, as I mentioned before, maybe I didn't articulate it clearly enough, but we do not put a property as available for sale unless it's fully tenanted with a qualified tenant in place.
Okay. Do you want to finish this up, or we go to the next property?
Yeah, I think this is a super solid property. It's a good price point, 135. You'd be putting, 27,000 down. Your closing costs of say 4,700. So, you're at about 32,000. The lender fees. Graham, you tell me if you would agree with this suggestion. I usually, just as a rough estimate, this will be a fun little exercise here. They're going to be borrowing 108,000, and the fees on that, and my guesstimate would be about $3,300. Would I be even close to correct?
Well, here's the thing, Phil. We kind of give a generic closing cost on the third parties. Our lender fees is what I have control of, is $1,394. It never changes regardless of what market you go to and what you buy. Okay. The other third parties, title, appraisal, everything, all other that's not controlled by me, is usually dictated by the state. Okay, so they do vary from one state to the next, but generally, Phil, we're probably talking anywhere from 2,500 to 3,500 tops on the all other fees. So you're pretty close. Okay.
There you go. As I describe it to a newbie investor who's trying to understand, well, what do you mean by lender fee? I said, well, you've got the origination fee, you've got an appraisal fee. And then I'm kind of stuck because I don't know what the rest of it's called. So I say, and then there's the fee. So, but no, I mean, here's the reality, as far as I'm concerned. For investors, it is what it is. Okay. Leverage is absolutely an investor's best friend in the real estate investment game. Why? Because if you had, say, 135,000 in cash, the question comes, should I buy this property for 135,000? Or would I not perhaps be better to break it up into 3 or 4 parts and buy 3 or 4 houses, putting 20% down? The houses are going to spit off the same gross amount of profitability, whether you own 20% of it or 100% of it. So better to own only 20% of it and, laugh all the way to the bank as your portfolio grows. There's another thing too. And I don't know if you ever talk about this with folks, and I hope you don't take this with any disrespect, but buying real estate, one of the 5 profit centers of investment real estate is an inflation hedge, and we saw inflation rates go out of control in the past year plus. But the cool thing is, with the inflation hedge, you're borrowing today dollars from Highlands Mortgage, and you're paying back over time with lesser value thanks to inflation tomorrow dollars. And guess what? Highlands Mortgage is never going to come back to you and say, hey, I want a little bit of that back. So you borrow X and you pay back X minus.
One of the things that we're doing for our clients in today's market, as you say, the inflation has kind of caught up with us. We're up at a little bit higher rate than we were, say, prior to the pandemic. But what we're doing, and we understand what investors are going through today. So if you buy a property with Phil today, and we do the loan for you, and whatever the rate may be, We know that this economy is eventually going to run into the recession wall. And when that happens, rates always come back down. Analysts are saying third quarter, fourth quarter, maybe next year, depending on whatever it is. But here nor there, we're guaranteeing our customers, if they buy a property today and we do a loan for them, we'll give them a 3-year guarantee. So in 3 years, if and when that recession does kick in, the rates come back to a palatable level, and it makes sense. We want to make sure we understand it has to make sense. We will refinance with you, and we won't charge you that $1,394. We'll just put you.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
Okay.
That's amazing. It really is.
Well, let's take a look at this last one here, Phil, on Lindale, which I think I know pretty well.
Yeah, well, actually, yeah, we have 2 Lindale properties, 3313 and its sister property next door at 3311. They're virtual carbon copies, $125,000 purchase price. This house is in beautiful condition. 3 bed, 1 bath, kind of on the small side at 896 square feet. Built like it's next door neighbor in 1925, but look at the rent, $1,200 a month.
Wow.
And an 8.4% return. What's not to like about this property? It's super. This is very, very indicative of I think the absolute norm and average that we handle and offer. I love this property.
Back to the leverage as your friend use it. I totally agree. I have a guide, and the listeners who want to get a copy of the guide, please email me and I'll be glad to send it to you. If you're on YouTube, there's a little button at the top right hand and you can download the guide. But inside the guide, I talk about, okay, I've got $150,000 cash. I can go buy a property from Phil for $150,000 cash. I don't have a mortgage on it. I'm really good. But if you took that $150,000 house and put 20% down on 5 properties, and then you add in the leverage, the debt service, management, the whole 9 yards, you're actually more than double your cash flow buying 5 than you are buying 1 with cash. And people tell me all the time, well, why don't you pay off your loan? Why? I mean,
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to, if I die, I'm gonna let my heirs worry about it. Just don't.
At my age, and I am older than dirt, that's for sure. The reality is that a lot of people my generation and older, it's just kind of an American post-World War II mindset, of debt is bad. Ooh, pay off that mortgage, have a party, burn your note when you've made your last payment. Why? Why? You could create wealth with Turnkey Rentals. I mean, look, there are authors and well-known people, from Robert Kiyosaki to Grant Cardone to a number of other people, that will say the same thing. The true path to unleash your wealth potential is turnkey rental property.
I agree.
And that's why I'm thrilled to be a part of this business.
Well, Phil, this has been really, really good. I love doing this kind of stuff because I get more informed. It's almost like I didn't think I had to learn some more stuff. Now I learned some more stuff. So guys, what we're trying to tell you today is marry the property, date the rate. Okay, because we're gonna be there for you in the next 3 years. Phil's got some tremendous opportunities in these 3 cities. Do not hesitate to give him a call. Phil, is your 800 number your best call, or should we use your cell phone?
You know what? You can call me directly. Leave me a message if I'm not able to answer, because I might be on a plane or in another place. But I will always be happy to return the call. I'm also on WhatsApp with this same number, which is probably the easiest and best way to get a hold of me. It's area code 617-678-7940. My email is Phil, P-H-I-L, at portfoliopropertiesusa.com.
And do guys go onto this website, because I've looked at it yesterday. It's really a good website. It's got a lot of great properties on there. Phil is one of the best out there doing what he does. If I could work with 25 Phils, I'd tell everybody else to take a hike, you know.
Well, you're very generous.
He's tremendous to work with. The ease is like you say, transparent, very streamlined. And like I say, if you're looking to get into investing, this is the place to start.
Well, you're very generous, and it's always a pleasure to see you, to talk with you, to work with you. I do appreciate Aaron the same. And thank you both for the opportunity.
Thank you.